Welcome to our three-part webinar series, Managing Business Change in the New World of the Decision Model and Business Decision Management Software. Jointly brought to you by Knowledge Partners International and Sapiens. You're listening to recording of Part 2, Introduction to Business Decision Management Software. You will hear an introduction to Sapiens by Toma Strolevich. He is Vice President, Professional Services and Business Development at Sapiens Americas and responsible for the sales and implementation of the latest business decision management software, Decision. This will be followed by Gil Siegel, Director Enterprise Solutions at Sapiens as well. Gil has over 23 years of experience working with business rules and business decision technologies. He is the Director of Enterprise Solutions at Sapiens Americas and the subject matter expert on Sapiens' Business Decision Management System, Decision.
We've been around for more than 25 years, providing innovative solution, model-driven architecture for many organizations. With over 100 customers worldwide using our core technology. We're constantly providing solutions to the financial services and other industries around rule management, decision solutions, and took the challenge with the decision model and provided state-of-the-art technology that has been implemented and has been served. And we'll be presenting this one today. So Sapiens is a global company. Our U.S. headquarters is located in North Carolina. We are a publicly traded company with over 700 employees worldwide, multiple locations across the world. In the U.S., we are in the Cary, North Carolina, New Jersey. We have a Canadian office in Mississauga, and also UK, Israel, Japan, and recently Australia, Belgium, and even Singapore. So we are kind of all over the world. We've implemented technology solution with top 100 companies across the globe from different industries. We are financially stable. We are backed up by two very large corporations, Asseco and Formula, which give us a good foundation with everything we need and highly appreciated in the marketplace. Among our customers, you can find very large financial services organizations, from banking institutes to large insurance companies. Also on the technology side, you can find other companies that are not necessarily on the financial services side. Most of our customers implement a rule-based technology. Many of our customers rely on our base technology and core technology, which serve as the foundation to building decision, taking the years of knowledge in building and understanding model-driven architecture and building solution and modeling. Since the early 80s, we were able to come up and present a decision solution that is a breakthrough through the industry itself. A little bit about the challenges. What is it that we're dealing and facing today from a business perspective? The business logic, as we all know it, is embedded within a variety of areas within the business itself. It is embedded within the processes, within the procedures and technology. Very hard to get into. It is written in a business language that is translated between different parts. It's ambiguous and incomplete. We understand it's not consistent between parties. A lot of duplications, redundancy, and basically it's very hard to keep track of the changes across the organization. We find out during the review with KPI and with our build of the technology, excuse me, it's very difficult to explain and validate the business requirements across the organization. So we're looking for a standard that can use it. The decision model serves the methodology, and decision implementing all principles enable the full scalability for a governance organization. The operational complexity brings us to a position where we have multiple dispersed systems due to acquisitions across different business life cycle, multiple regions across the world or within the U.S. itself. We have customer requirements. There is no standardization on how to create those. We understand this is causing headaches across the operational, both the technical and the business side. Multiple applications, multiple systems that doesn't know how to speak with one another, lack of transparency. We understand there is lack of reporting capabilities, the BI is limited, and understanding of the impact of any change to the system or any rule management is becoming very hard to be handled. Data qualities and costs are increasing significantly, and we need to come up with what is the solution for this one. So Sapiens came up with the decision model that was architected and created very closely with Larry Goldberg and Barbara Van Holle from KPI, the inventors of the decision model and the concept and the methodology, and came with an idea that there is a need for a system that can take the business and present it in a very simple, visible way under a very rigid structure to the business itself, to enable business take control over the process and present the information in a very clear way across the organization. What we will present to you today is the ability to take a deep dive into decision about the capabilities, about the advantages, about the way to implement decision model within a governed system. How does it interact with other systems within the organization, and what are the capabilities that are presented within decision. Gil?
Thank you, Tono. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining. I had the very fortunate opportunity to work with Larry and Barbara many times in the past, and more recently on early drafts of the decision model book. That was my first exposure to the decision model, and at that time I was very impressed and saw immediately how it could be very, very useful. But what really sold me on the decision model and its true value was a session I happened to walk in on. Well, I was invited, so I didn't just walk in on it, but a session I happened to sit in on with one of our customers. It was a Friday session. They called it a validation session, and I walk into this room of about 40 people, a nice mix of business people, IT people, and senior management, and they were all looking at decision models. They had a projector in the room, and they were projecting the graphical decision models up on the board. They had handouts that people could leaf through and peruse the decision models at their leisure as they were going through it. And what was amazing to me at that day was I was there for 2 hours, and I was watching these people, again, a mix of business, IT, and management, and they were going through these decision models, and everybody could understand what they were looking at. The business logic was visible to all, understandable to all. Anytime a question was asked, they can immediately point out where this fact type, this value comes from here, this fact type comes from here. This is the rule family that results in that, and everybody got it. And I was sitting there for 2 hours with my mouth just wide open and amazed by the value, by the tremendous value that this decision model brought to that particular company. And obviously, all of you are here today to hear how it will bring value to you as well. So what we're going to show you today is how we took the decision model and built a system around it. We call it an enterprise-level business decision management system, BDMS. And when I say the decision model, I'm really not talking about the decision model as is described in the book. The book was published about 2 years ago, and since then has undergone a lot. The decision model has undergone a lot of extensions and refinement and additional capabilities. We have implemented all of those capabilities in Decision in our product, and we'll talk about some of those here today. But before we begin, let me define what I mean by business decision management system. Perhaps the easiest way to understand the business decision management system is to take the term business decision management system and break it up into 2 parts, business decisions and management. On the business decision side, we're talking about a central repository of all the various decision artifacts. Decision models are made up of decisions, graphical decisions, which is sometimes called decision views, rule families, and fact types. All of those reside within our tool in a single repository. You could start out working on the decision model with Visio and Excels, and in fact many customers do, but they find out very quickly that that does not scale. If you make a change to the Visio, that same change isn't reflected in the tabular rule family representation, and vice versa. So these 2 representations very quickly get out of sync. That's where you need a centralized repository, and that's what we provide. With a centralized repository, of course, the two remain in sync, and you'll see that later in the demo. The second piece is the management system. It's not enough to just have these in a repository. You need to manage the artifacts basically from cradle to grave. So we provide the ability to manage the artifacts from their creation, validation, testing, review, approval, deployment, and then you can go through more additional cycles of change, review, approval, redeployment, and so on, and then eventually retirement of the artifacts. So true cradle-to-grave management of the artifacts. So that's what we mean when we say business decision management system. And we're aiming this at the enterprise level because it's designed to scale, designed to handle not just 10 decisions, 100 decisions, it's designed to handle a large repository, large complex repository of many decisions, many rule families, large fact types, large number of fact types, and to do that in a structured and controlled way. So to put this another way, Safe Decision enables the following set of capabilities. First and foremost, sharing of business logic throughout the enterprise and beyond. So the idea here is that with the decision model, business logic becomes very visible, very understandable. As I said, walking into that, seeing that validation session that day, they were all looking at decision models on the board and everybody understood what they were talking about. So the decision model lends itself very well to sharing of business logic. Everything's visible, everything's understandable. But what's more interesting here is you can do that throughout your enterprise. Again, in the example I said earlier, business, IT, and management. But more than that, you can actually share up and down your supply chain. So there's nothing to prevent you if your some people in your supply chain are using decision as well. You could export decision models under the appropriate non-disclosure agreements, of course. You could take your decision models and actually share them with your customers, for example, or with your suppliers. And that could have tremendous value in some scenarios. Another nice advantage of the decision model and its implementation in decision is that it's a model that completely separates business logic. You're modeling the business logic, you're modeling just the business logic, you're testing it, you're validating it, you're deploying it, and you have that completely separated from any other model that you would have. So it's not, the business logic is not buried in a process model. It can be linked to the process model, of course, but it's not buried, it's not part of the process model, it's its own thing, and that lets you manage it and control it. And that leads us to business user empowerment. For many years, the holy grail of business rule vendors and business rule management systems has been business user empowerment. All of them have been claiming it for many, many years. But in fact, the reality is, if you look under the covers a little bit, that the business rule management systems that claim to have end-user business user empowerment really have that usually in some watered-down fashion. So you can't get the full capability of the system. You can't get the full capability of the rules exposed to the end users, to the business users. They have some limited scale-down interface and limited deployment capabilities, if any at all. With Decision, we provide the business users full capabilities to completely control the business logic. And actually, if the organization is set up to allow that, to also deploy them. So we can have straight-through deployment as well. So this is true business user empowerment end-to-end. Another very important feature here is traceability. You cannot make a change, and I'll introduce a slide on this in a moment. You cannot make a change in the system without tying it to what we call a business change document. The business change document provides us with the full traceability of where this change came from, excuse me, where this change came from, what business objectives, what motivations, what led to the change, and all the changes that are tied to that the business change document are then always traceable back to that business change document. And you have full traceability from where the change came from, what changes were made, all the way through to where it was implemented and deployed. So we have full traceability. We provide a very comprehensive glossary function. We call it a federated glossary. You can define the glossary, what we call the world level glossary, so we have a single glossary shared with everybody. But you can also have separate community glossaries for parts of the organization that require their own terminology. So you have both capabilities with, of course, full permissions and control over who can see what. You also have the ability to share terms, fact types as we call them, between those glossaries. And lastly, as I already mentioned, full lifecycle support. That's what Decision brings to the table. Looking at the business decision maturity model, which was created by KPI, If you're not familiar with that, I'll just say a few quick words about it. The business decision maturity model describes an organization's maturity level in using business decisions. It's a scale of 0 to 5, where 0 is completely unmanaged, and 5 is an organization that has very mature business decision processes, architecture, and stewardship of the business decisions. So we're very happy to say that Sapiens Decision is the world's first application that's been certified for levels 1 through 4 of the business decision maturity model. And we achieve that through the functionality that's listed on the slide. First and foremost, the ability to have full reusability and customization of your business logic. And what we mean by that is that you can create decisions and use them. You can then create another related decision. So let's say you have a decision where you're deciding policy renewal method in some geography, or if you're deciding policy renewal method, and then in some geography you have the decision is slightly different. So you have some other considerations in that particular geography, but you want to reuse most of what you created in the original decision. So we call that a view, and you can have two decisions with that same conclusion. And then you can have the rule families that make up that decision. Some of them might be shared, so that's where you get the reusability of the rule families. And then maybe one or two or more might be specific to that other geography. So that's where you get the customization. So you have the ability to share what you can share and customize what you need to customize. So very powerful sharing and customization, sharing, reusability, and customization. We also have an extensive governance capability. You can define your own workflows. So you can define how many reviews you want for each particular workflow, how many approvers you want, and so on. You can find workflows are custom defined, set that up to whatever governance level you require. We can do that separately for the glossary and separately for the assets, the decision assets. And then we have the enterprise glossary management. That's that federated multi-level glossary that is described on the previous slide. So with all of these capabilities, we're able to handle anything from a project level, initial project, let's say, through complex enterprise projects at level 4 of the TDM. I mentioned earlier the business change document. It's a very key concept for us. Any business logic change that's made in the system is always tied to the business change document. The business change document defines what's associated with a workflow. We actually break up the business change document into tasks, and the tasks has workflow, as you can see on the slide where we assign users. So that's where we tie that to the workflow. And then we have this very innovative notion of the whiteboard. The whiteboard was our solution for the locking problem. So if you have a rule family that's shared to multiple decisions and you want to make a change to it, we didn't employ a checkout mechanism, check-in mechanism, because that would prevent, once you checked it out, that would prevent anybody else from working on that rule family. If it's shared to multiple decisions in the system, you would effectively lock out the entire system. So to avoid that, we created this whiteboard notion where people copy their assets that they want to work on to the whiteboard, again connected to a BCD, and they can work on their own private copy in that way, and when they're ready to submit, they submit the changes. There's a mechanism for detecting any conflicts if anybody else worked on the same asset in their own whiteboard, so we detect that and help you resolve it. And that's how we prevent locking in the system, and that's the whiteboard. A few words about where Sapiens Decision fits into the organization. So this slide, which you might have seen in the first webinar, consists of two columns, a design column and an execution column. In the design column, we would typically use some kind of process modeling tool to create the business process that we want to employ. Then we have a business decision management system to design the business logic, to design and model the business logic. And we tie that to some logical data model. At execution time, we have a business process execution engine that would execute the process we designed. And then we have a runtime environment for the rules engine, which would execute the rules, the business decisions that were created in the business decision management system. And that business rule engine would tie to the production data store, to the operational data store. Today we're going to focus on the modeling side, on the business decision management system. This is Decision. Decision can, of course, deploy the decision to the business rule management system and create the decision service if you wish. We can, of course, provide the business rule management system as well, or you can choose any business rule engine of your choice. Which leads us to deployment to a rules engine. As I just said, the deployment can be to our own rule engine, which is known as eMerge. And then we have deployment adapters to a variety of rule engines. To date, we've deployed to iLog and rules, and we have the capability to deploy to any other rule engine. One key point here is that you can choose your own rule engine, of course. It does not require inferencing. When deploying decision models, inferencing, also known as the Reedy algorithm, is just not required. The decision model takes care of that for us. A few words about the technology. Decision is built on a very modern browser-based user interface. It's using state-of-the-art service-oriented n-tier architecture. We built in a very flexible integration capability. You see here some of the integration points, decisions here in the middle. We can integrate with the rules engine, as we saw in the previous slide. We can integrate with various external systems that can invoke various things in decision and get responses back. We can integrate with the security mechanism, the Active Directory. We can integrate with the business process management system. We can integrate with an external glossary, so you can choose to have the glossary managed within decision itself or use an external glossary as your system of record. And you can import and export a wide variety of the various artifacts we discussed. Things such as view groups, well, I haven't mentioned view groups yet, but decision views, rule family views, glossaries, and so on. At this point, we'll switch over to the demo. So this will be a live demo of the system. What we've done is we've taken the demo and broken it up into three parts, and I'll lead each part with a slide so you can follow along more easily. So in part one, we're just going to do a quick high-level walkthrough of the system. And we'll start out by just looking at the work pane. So we'll see graphical decision views and tabular rule family views, the stuff that makes up the decision model. I'll also show you how we manage cross-reference information through the additional info pane and the tabbed references pane. And I'll show you a little bit of our search capabilities. So this is what we call the decision home screen. And just real briefly, on the left, we have the My Content pane. This is where whiteboards live, and we'll see that a little bit later in the demo. In the middle, we have the work pane. This is where most of the work is done, and you'll see that throughout the demo. And then on the right, we have the additional info pane, and this is where we'll see that cross-reference information that I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and drill down on view groups. View groups are just a grouping of decision artifacts. We have a high-level grouping called the world, and then for our demo today, I have a group called sample, which will expand. And as soon as I do that, we see the decision views that make up that particular view group. I can drill down some more and see all the rule families that make up that decision view. I can drill down on a rule family view and see all of the fact types that participate in that particular rule family. At any point, as I click on various objects here as I go through, you'll notice that the additional info pops up with the relevant information for the object I clicked on. In this case, I've clicked on the decision view, determine policy renewal method, and we can see that this decision view is made up of 6 rule family views, 22 fact types. At this point, it has a single version. It's associated with a single view group, and there's one other decision with the same name, which is the one we see down here. If I click on something else, so in this case I'm clicking on a rule family, the display over here switches to the relevant information for that particular object. So here, for this particular rule family, it has one version, participates, it's associated with one decision view. There's one other rule family with the same conclusion. It has 4 fact types, and so on. Going back to one for the decision, if I happen to click on one of these things, all these links over here, all these blue items on the additional info pane are clickable. So if I click on any one of these, I can get all the detail, what we call the detail pane, and I can continue exploring from here. I can expand this and see where this particular, these are rule families in this case, I can expand this rule family, see where it's used, and so on, so I can continue my exploration in that manner. If I go ahead and open a decision view, I'll see the graphical presentation. So here we see the entire decision. And I have lots of very easy to use navigation options. I can, of course, zoom. I can move around freely. As you see, I can display an overview panel, which helps us navigate very large decision views. This one's rather small. and I can move around in that manner. If I know what I'm looking for, if I know I'm looking for a particular rule family, I can select it from this list. So let's say I'm looking for insured major location change, and that immediately relocates the display to that rule family. If I know I'm looking for a particular fact type, I can click on the list of fact types. This list tends to get rather large, so I have another nice little feature here, which is a filter. I can pull up the filter and basically create a little filter mechanism here to control which fact types I can select from. So let's say I want to see only the fact types that contain the word major in them. So I can filter that, immediately get my list of majors, and I can select one of them. As soon as I select it, notice it gets highlighted everywhere it appears in the diagram. And it also gives me a list of all the rule families in which that particular fact type participates. If I click on one of them, the diagram relocates to that particular location. So very nice, very easy to use navigation options. And again, throughout this demo, I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg as to the capabilities of the system. You can, of course, contact us later to get a more detailed demo. I can open any one of these rule families. In this case, I happen to pick the policy underwriting risk rule family. I can see the rule family. So here I'm in an Excel-like presentation, and like Excel, I have very similar capabilities. So I have the ability to sort rows, sort columns, move columns, hide rows, hide columns, and things like that. These tables can get rather wide, so we can, of course, minimize these panes on the side to get a little bit more screen space. I can also zoom in or out, and so I have some nice capabilities there. You can also open multiple tabs, one over the other or side by side. I'll show that a little bit later in the demo. And so you can display multiple of these and compare them side by side. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the decision model, let's quickly see how you would read this particular rule family. So we're looking at here are 6 rows. I'll look at the bottom row, and the way you'd read this is if insured major location change is no, and insured major ownership change is no, and policy annual premium is less than or equal to $32,000, and policy discontinued agent is no, and policy manual flag is no, then the policy underwriting risk is acceptable. So we call these the conditions, and this shaded one over here, the policy underwriting risk, is the conclusion. So we basically and between the columns, and we or between the rows. So either this row is true or one of these other rows should be true. So the way this is read is if insured major change is yes, then policy underwriting risk is unacceptable. So that's how we read these rule families. Anywhere you see a column where the heading is underlined, that means that this fact type is actually the conclusion of another rule family. We call that a supporting rule family, and we're using the result of that in this rule family. So if I right-click on this, I can go down and see the supporting rule family, and we can explore the logic there. What I just did, if you look at it graphically, I started out from the policy underwriting risk, and I went down to see, actually I didn't notice which one it was. It was one of these two. It was either the insured major ownership change or the insured major location change. I don't recall which one I clicked on. So we went down the tree in that manner, down the diagram in that manner. Another nice capability we have is this quick search. At any time I can search for something. So let's say I'm searching for the word renewal. It will quickly pull up for me anywhere in the system that the word renewal appears. So we're searching here for decision views, rule family views, fact types. We'll search what we call the business-friendly name, aliases, fully qualified names, etc. So anywhere the word renewal shows up, we get a very nice and easy search and can explore from there. I also have a very extensive query builder capability where I can select which artifacts I want to search on, decision views, fact types, or rule families, and then construct a fairly complex query. Now, let's just do, for an example, if I can do fact type, business-friendly name, contains, let's say we'll do major like we did earlier, Notice that as I type that, I get an autocomplete. So the autocomplete is again looking at the fact type name, business-friendly name, the fully qualified name, and aliases, and so on. So it's a very intelligent autocomplete. And then I can run the query, and I get the results, which I can immediately then continue exploring. So that's the first part of the demo. Let's switch back to PowerPoint and look at part 2. In part 2, what we're going to do is create a business change document. Now, in order to create a business change document, I need to have a business change. So that's actually our starting point. We have a change to corporate policy. Again, looking at the demo system we just saw, we're talking about policy renewals. So how do we do a policy renewal? Which method are we going to use, whether it's automatic or manual? And we have a change to the corporate policy that's now telling us that we need to consider whether there was a flood zoning change to determine whether we would renew, what method we would use to renew the insurance policy in Florida. So we will create a BCD for that, and we'll create a BCD task, and we'll see how that works. So I'm switching back to the system, and I need to log in. In order to do that, I need to log in as a business change document manager, BCD manager. So I'll go ahead and log back in. Okay, so we're now logged back in as a business change document manager, BCD manager. I'll go ahead and create a new BCD. We'll call it flood zoning change for Florida. You can put in the description. So just to save time here, I'll just cut and paste. We select which view group we're going to work in, which will be the sample view group. And the BCD at this point is now created, and we now move on to create a task. BCDs consist of one or more tasks. So here I'm creating the task. I'll use just the same description for the task in the interest of time. And I'll move on to the task workflow. As I said earlier, we have very extensive workflow capabilities. We have separate workflows for the task artifacts, decisions primarily, and fact types. The workflows are customizable. That's done through the creation of a template. So you create the template once, and then you can reuse it. So here I have 2 templates. We'll start from a complex one. I'll walk you through that, and then we'll actually switch to a simple one for the remainder of the demo. So this is a fairly complex workflow we see here. We start out in whiteboard. This is where we create the artifacts. The whiteboard state is associated with a particular role, which is called decision analyst. So I can only assign decision analysts to work on that particular state. And then we define the transitions. Everything you see on this diagram, with the exception of the end state down here at the bottom, and all the text you see in capitals, everything else is custom. So you can define what states you have. So we have a whiteboard state, a pending peer review state, pending business owner approval state, pending deployment descriptor, and so on. And we have custom transitions. You can label the transitions whatever you want. So going from the whiteboard to peer review, pending peer review, I created a transition called send for peer review. And then let's say from the pending business owner approval, I have a transition of approved, and I have a transition of rejected. So you control all of that. As part of the workflow, you also control whether what the asset statuses are. So when going from whiteboard, where all the assets are created or changed as drafts, going to peer review, they become candidates. After the business owner approval, they become approved. So we control the statuses, the asset statuses through the workflow as well. Another very interesting capability here is what we call segregation of duties. So in this triangle here where we have the whiteboard, pending peer review, and pending business owner approval, this is where we create, review, and approve business logic changes. If our corporate policy is such that a single user cannot do more than one of those, so you can't review or approve something that you created, or you can't both review and approve, that's segregation of duties. And we mark that here by this distinct user capability. So any of the states that are marked distinct user cannot be assigned to the same user. Even if that user has multiple roles in the system, that user cannot appear more than once, in this case in these 3. So that's called segregation of duties, which is a very nice capability. Let's go ahead and select our simple workflow. as you can see, much simpler. We just have whiteboard and business owner approval. Let's go ahead and select a user so we can actually use the workflow. And we're done with that. And then we'll do the same thing for the fact types. I'll select my fact type, and we'll assign a glossary administrator. And we're done. We'll go ahead and mark it as done and start the workflow. Switching back to the PowerPoint, moving on to part 3. Part 3 is the actual decision modeling. So up till now, we just did a quick overview of the system, and we did we set up a BCD, which enables us to do the work. Now we get to actually doing the work, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a new fact type called flood zoning change. We will go ahead and flesh out that fact type. We will then send it over for review and approval. Then once we have it approved, we will update the rule family view. So we'll add a column to deal with it. We'll add to work with that new fact type. We'll add a row. So we'll see how that works. We'll then submit the decision review itself for approval. The approver will look at that decision review and see what was changed to it. We call that a compare. And then once they're done reviewing it, they will approve it. And we'll see what happens in the system as a result of all of that. So let's go ahead and log in as a decision analyst. That's the person who does the decision modeling work. Because the workflow was assigned to this particular decision analyst, Karen, as you can see up here in the top right corner, a task appears in her queue. You can see this indication of a new task. So we can go ahead and open the queue and look at what work was assigned. So we can see her description of the change. We can open a task to read any additional documentation or settings that were established there to learn what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So having done that, I can go ahead and start doing work. So from reading the task and all documentation associated with the task, Karen understands that she needs to add the flood zoning change for Florida. So she goes and looks at the policy renewal method for Florida. That's a view. Earlier we looked at the base view. Now we have the Florida view. And if I go ahead and open the decision view, and we can see, I'll make this a little bit bigger. We can see that most of the rule families use the view of base, which means they're reused. But 2 of them, the insured major location change and the policy discount, are custom for Florida. They use a different view. They use the Florida view. So that's what I meant earlier when we said we can reuse everything we can reuse, share, and we can customize what we need to customize. So in the case of Florida, in this case, and by the way, the views don't have to be by geography. They can be by customer or anything else that makes sense in your business. Any way to organize these or to segregate these. So in this case, we're doing it by geography, and we have the insured major location change, which is already been customized for Florida. We're going to go ahead and make another change to it. So I'll just copy that to my whiteboard. So select which whiteboard. And as soon as I do that, I can expand my whiteboard, and I see that actually 2 artifacts showed up in my whiteboard. The rule family view itself, which is the one I selected, and it brought along with it the decision view that it's part of. If we make this a little bit bigger, we'll see that it brought the Florida decision view. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on our rule family. Here's what the rule family looks like. So it has several conditions already in it, and I know from the description of the work that needs to be done that I need to insert a new column. So doing that, I get a new column over here. I can choose what I want to call the column or pick an existing column, existing fact type from the glossary. So if I type, let's say, zoning, we'll see that the only zoning-related fact type currently in the glossary is hurricane zoning, and that's not the one I want. So I'll go ahead and type the name that I want, which is flood zoning change. Now I'll select that. And when I save it, you'll notice that the flood zoning change got added to my whiteboard. You'll notice also that's in red, with this icon at the front. This icon in the red color indicate that the fact type is a new fact type. It's a draft fact type, and that I need to go ahead and have it approved before I can submit my work. So in order to approve it, I need to flesh it out, and I'll go ahead and do that by opening the fact type. So this is what the fact type definition looks like. And there's a lot of details here which we don't really have time to go through today. I'll just point out a couple of them. One of them is a data type, so we can select what data type we have. This one will be an indicator, which is a Boolean. And then we'll also can specify what we want to do with valid values. I want to specify that I'm going to have a set of valid values. I'll go ahead and flesh out those values. So we have yes and no. One other interesting thing to point out while we're here on the fact type is the deployment. So part of the deployment is this section which we call the target data model mapping. So this is where you would specify how this particular fact type is implemented in your actual data model, what data model you're using, what version of the data model you're using, and what field or column it maps to. So you specify that here, and you can have multiple target data models. I will go ahead and save my fact type as it is. It's already validated, and I'm good to go. As far as sending it for approval, notice that a new task popped up in my work queue. This is a task to remind me that I need to submit my fact type. This is a fact type related task. In fact, this is where I send it for approval. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll say please, here you can put in an optional comment. I'll just say please approve my fact type. As soon as that's done, I can continue working on my model. I will log off for now and log back in as the glossary administrator. The glossary administrator receives notification in their queue that they have something waiting for their approval. So it's going to open that task and review it. So this is where they would see that they have one asset related to the task. They can open up the fact type and see the fact type definition, which we were just looking at. They also get the whiteboard where it was created, so they can view the context in which this particular fact type was created. You notice that the icon on the fact type has changed from the draft icon we had before to this clock, which indicates that this is now a draft waiting for, sorry, this is now a candidate waiting for approval. And then, so let's assume that the glossary administrator reviewed everything they need to review, and they're okay with the fact type, and they will go ahead and approve it. They can optionally add a comment. At this point, you notice the icon and the coloring on the flood zone change have gone away. We'll log back in as a decision analyst. And continue our work. So we'll pull up our rule family. And the first thing I'm going to do is just move the column because I don't like it here at the end. So I'll just drag it. And we'll put it at the beginning. And we can go ahead and start populating the cells. So let's say in this cell, I want to say no. This picked up the values from the values we defined on the fact type, but in reality I can enter whatever values I want. This is a modeling tool. So at the time we're modeling, we may or may not know the full set of values that are relevant for a particular fact type. So I can go ahead and enter whatever I want. The system will take it. I can go ahead and save at this point. No issue with that. This is intentional, so the system allows you to do this. The point is that this will not pass validation. So at the time you're modeling, you can go ahead and put in whatever values you want. When you validate, it will be flagged as an error. So the validation is what checks and enforces the various decision model principles. One of the principles, of course, is that you have to have valid proper domain values. This one is not a proper domain value. It's called out. At this point, I can either fix the cell, or I can go ahead and add this value to my domain values. In this case, of course, I will go ahead and fix it. Just select the value. And then let's go ahead and add a row as well. And in this row, we will say is yes. So now our rule family is complete. And we need to put in the conclusion. We'll say is yes there. Save that. And then validate again. And once I validate, you see that the error is gone. No issues. This rule family is now validated. And the last thing I would like to do, I like nice diagonals, so we can go ahead and move the row. Save it where I wish. So now I have a nice diagonal. That's totally cosmetic. There's no significance to the order of the rows in the rule family. And we're done with this rule family. Let's go look at what happened at the decision. So I open up my decision. Zoom in a little bit. What I want to point out is that the flood zoning change was automatically added to our rule family representation, what we call the tablet, on the decision model. This is the point I made earlier about with a single repository, everything is always in sync. So any changes I make to the rule family tabular representation are immediately reflected on the decision view. I didn't have to do anything to do that, and that way these are always in sync. They're actually both representations of the same data. We'll go ahead and validate our decision view. And at this point, we're done with the work, the modeling work, and we'll go back to our queue to go ahead and submit it to the next step in the workflow. If you remember, we only had one other step in the workflow, which was approval. And so we'll go ahead and send this to approval. You can put in whatever comment you want. And now we'll switch to the business owner approver. And again, I'd like to remind you that the workflow is totally custom. You can have as many reviews, approvals, steps as you need to per your governance process. In this case, we just chose a simple model due to lack of time this morning, afternoon. All right, so the approver gets the task now in their queue. So this is how they get notified that they have something new waiting for them. They can open the task to review the details of the task. They can see the assets that were associated with the task. They can see the whiteboard. So they can open up any one of these and see them. But much more interesting than that, they also have a compare capability. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll choose to compare this with the original version from which it started. And what I get here is a nice side-by-side comparison of the two decision views. The one on the left is the one that's now up for review. You can see that in the title. It's off to the right here, but believe me, the one on the left is the one for review, and the one on the right, you can see, is the approved one. So the only change that's called out here is that the rule family called Insured Major Location Change between these two is different. Similarly, I can open the rule family, the tabular presentation. I can select what I want to compare it against. Let's say the original here. And I get a nice side-by-side comparison here. The coloring scheme indicating that I added a row. Or sorry, changed a row. This is the changed row. I added a column. And I added a row. So that's a comparison. So let's say that the the approver has now gone through everything, compared everything, is happy with the change, and goes ahead and approves it. At this point, the assets are now approved. Go ahead and close these. If I go ahead and expand the asset or expand the navigation pane, I can see in the additional info that the decision view now has two versions. Earlier it had one version. And I can see who, in this little property pane here, I can see the audit trail, I can see what version we're at. Before was 1.0, who created it, when, who approved it, and I have a full trail of what happened. I can also open up the BCD, of course, and look at the BCD that was done. I see which BCD it's tied to right up here. And open that, explore that, so I have full traceability to where this change came from, who did it, when they did it, who approved it, etc. At this point, I'd like to hand it back to Tomo. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. So to summarize the benefit that we have with what we've seen, we're looking at an increased speed to market over the entire process, drastically reducing the time to implement new product, new changes in the system, the idea to move the control to the business and use IT and leverage the IT for other capabilities, but give the control to the business and not serve as a mitigator. Comprehensive repository for real-time impact analysis, as you've seen in the demonstration, the ability to understand where the impact touches the area of the business in real time and not after the fact is crucial and saves tons of money. Extensive reuse of the rules decision for different markets, for different uses and different selling channels. Very comprehensive traceability around the product itself, and significant improvement in the business intelligence and the capabilities on the reporting side itself. We'll summarize just with a quick note about a case study that was created on how simple it is to create rules in a system on one of the largest financial services. Within a 5 weeks project, they were able to create from scratch 3 decisions, about 60 different rule families with 130 fact type, with limited knowledge on the decision model, but understanding the concept themselves. I cannot say this one is full, but it represents that within a couple of weeks you can grasp the system, very easy to work with, and the ability to get results and deploy to multiple rule engine, either the integrated one, which we have in the system eMERGE, or an external one, rules, Cordicon, iLog, etc., can be done very easily. With this, we'll conclude the webinar. Please feel free to contact us for any information or any questions, or visit sapiensdecision.com to learn about Sapiens Decision and about our capabilities. Thank you very much for joining us. Michael?
Yeah, there are 2 more questions, and I know we are running out of time, but it might be worthwhile to answer. It's not only 2, but it's a whole set of questions regarding rule engines and their impact on it. There was also a question, what does it mean if the RETI algorithm is not required? So if you or Jill could quickly answer that.
Okay, I'll take a stab. I'll take a stab. So the impact on rules engine is such that we model decisions using Sapiens Decision, as we saw, and we can deploy the resulting business decisions and rule families to any rule engine. So if the rule engine can handle the business logic, which all rule engines should be able to handle the results of the rule families, we can deploy to that rule engine. It doesn't matter if that particular rule engine has RETI or not. The execution of business decisions does not require inferencing. All the inferencing is already done at the design time, at the modeling time. There's no runtime inferencing required.
So does that have impact also on speed, processing speed?
Absolutely. RETI is a very expensive algorithm from a performance point of view. So being able to turn that off and using a sequential mode is significantly more efficient.
Okay. And then there are a couple of questions regarding deployment. Some people ask whether this is available as cloud, or what kind of deployment scenarios are available. Maybe Toma or
Yes, absolutely. Good question. So we have multiple options, both the deployment on a customer premise, but also a hosted solution that is available. We're also providing a cloud offering very shortly that will enable running this one using our cloud services, software as a service, and we'll be able to provide more services around this one, more answers. If question will arise, please contact us directly.
Very good. So with this, I will conclude today's webinar. I hope we will see you back on December 14th for part 3. If you have questions, please contact Toma or I, we're more than happy to also discuss private presentations or lunch and learn opportunities at companies. You have phone numbers shown here. Thank you so much for joining, and see you soon. Bye-bye.